Welcome to Debate the News True Crime. I'm Joseph Lobosco, joined by host Adrienne Barker. Tonight, we delve into a heartbreaking case from Washington State, the tragic story of Travis Decker, a father and Army veteran accused of murdering his 3 young daughters. It's a case that stunned the nation and devastated an entire community.
Before we begin, a warning to our listeners. This episode involves violence against children and familial homicide, which some listeners may find deeply disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. If you or someone you know needs support, help may be available via the Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. We approach this story with respect for all the victims. May they rest in peace.
And a quick disclaimer, Adrienne and I are not attorneys, law enforcement officials, or psychologists. We research each case thoroughly, but this show is recorded live with minimal editing, and any factual errors that may occur are unintentional. Any individuals we discuss who haven't been convicted in a court of law are presumed innocent until proven guilty. The opinions of our guests and audience members are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of myself, Adrienne, or Debate the News.
This is Debate the News True Crime. Let's dive into this case timeline.
Our case timeline starts in 2022. Travis Decker and his wife Whitney separate after 7 years of marriage. The split comes amid Travis's mounting mental health struggles. He's an Army veteran grappling with severe feelings of isolation and paranoia. At one point, he is diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Travis seeks treatment for his mental health issues, but is unable to obtain consistent care.
September 2024. Concern for the children's welfare prompts Whitney to file a stricter parenting plan in court. In that filing, she cites Travis's erratic behavior and emotional problems as serious hindrances to his ability to parent. The court grants Travis only limited time with their daughter, just a few hours on a certain days, and only within the Wenatchee area. The plan still orders Travis to undergo anger management classes and a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation. And if he fails to comply, Whitney would have grounds to further restrict or even revoke his visitation rights.
Only days before the girl's disappearance, Travis shows signs of desperate planning. Investigators later discovered that on May 26, he searched online for, quote, how to relocate to Canada, and even browsed a Canadian employment website. It appears Travis may have been contemplating a drastic escape or relocation in the lead-up to the fateful custody visit.
May 30th, 2025. On that Friday, the 3 Decker sisters head out for a scheduled visitation with their dad. Under the parenting plan, Travis is supposed to return them to their mother by 8 p.m. that evening. But 8 p.m. comes and goes with no signs of Travis or the girls. By 9:45 p.m., frantic Whitney contacts the police to report that her daughters are missing. She explains that it's extremely unlike Travis to violate the custody agreement, which raises immediate red flags. Police also learn that Travis has recently been essentially homeless, living out of his vehicle or staying at campgrounds and motels in the area. Whitney warns officers that Travis has been struggling with mental health issues lately, heightening her concern for the girls' safety.
May 31st, 2025. The next day, there's still no trace of the Decker sisters or their father. The Wenatchee Police Department issues an endangered missing persons alert for Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia. While the situation is dire, it doesn't yet meet the strict criteria for an Amber Alert. Nevertheless, authorities publicly state that the children are believed to be in danger and unable to return home on their own. The alert notes that the girls were last seen with their father and urges the public to be on the lookout for Travis's truck.
June 2nd, 2025. The search comes to a horrific end. Around 3:45 p.m. on Monday, investigators locate Travis Decker's pickup truck near the remote Rock Island campground in Chelan County, Washington. Nearby, they make a grim discovery. The bodies of Caitlin, Evelyn, and Olivia are found lifeless at the campsite. All three children have been killed. Evidence at the scene is deeply disturbing. Travis's truck is smeared with what appears to be two bloody handprints, and inside the vehicle, officers find blankets, food items, the girls' car seats, and Travis's wallet sitting out on the center console. Investigators later reveal that Travis's cell phone data showed he had driven to and from the campground a day prior to the murders, suggesting a degree of premeditation. Missing from the scene is Travis himself. He has vanished into the wilderness. What begins as a missing person case has now become a triple homicide, and Travis Decker is the prime suspect.
June 3rd, 2025, with the community in shock and grief, law enforcement launches an intensive manhunt for the missing father. At a press conference, authorities announced that Travis Decker has been charged in absentia with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of first-degree kidnapping. Chelan County Sheriff Mike Morrison delivers a stark message to Travis, urging him to surrender and, quote, do the right thing. Officials warn the public that Travis is a former soldier who could be armed and dangerous. A $20,000 reward is offered for any information leading to his capture. Despite extensive searches by ground, air, and water, Travis remains at large. Investigators admit they have no strong leads on his whereabouts. It's as if he's vanished without a trace.
June 5th and 6th, 2025. In the days following the murders, Whitney's attorney, Ariana Cozart, speaks out to clarify the narrative. Cozart emphasizes that Travis has shown no clear warning signs that he would ever hurt his kids. By all accounts, Travis was a devoted father who attended his daughter's school events and sports games. There was nothing overt that foreshadowed this act of violence. Cozart argues that the greatest failure was the systematic. Travis, an Army veteran suffering from PTSD and other mental health issues, never received the full help he needed despite reaching out to the VA resources. The system really let Travis down, she laments, suggesting that if he ever got proper treatment, those girls would be alive today. Cozart also shares the family belief that Travis likely took his own life in the wilderness shortly after committing the unthinkable.
June 8th to 9th, 2025. Nearly a week has passed with no signs of Travis. On June 8th, the Chelan County Sheriff's Office announces that it is handing over leadership of the search to federal authorities, including the U.S. Marshals, due to the challenging terrain and the need for additional resources. Local officers continue to assist, vowing they will not rest until Travis is found. Then, on June 9th, the coroner releases the results of the girls' autopsies. Tragically, it confirms what everyone feared. The 3 sisters were suffocated, and their deaths are officially ruled homicides. The brutal manner in which these children were killed leaves the community even more heartbroken and outraged.
June 24th, 2025. As the summer wears on, the community gathers to remember and to honor the 3 young victims. Hundreds attend a public memorial service for Caitlin, Evelyn, and Olivia. And through tears, friends and family share stories about the girls' bright personalities. And one family friend describes the sisters as the kind of children everyone loved and looked forward to seeing, telling the crowd that the community aches with the love we still carry for them. And Whitney also speaks, thanking everyone for their support and expressing gratitude for the precious time she had with her daughters.
September 18th, 2025. After more than 3 months of fruitless searching, a development finally emerges. The Chelan County Sheriff's Office reports that human remains have been discovered in a rugged, forested area south of Leavenworth, Washington, not far from where Travis was last seen. The remains are believed to be those of Travis Decker. Investigators alongside forensic specialists, carefully process the scene. While positive identification is still pending at this point, the sheriff informs Whitney and the extended Decker family of the discovery. The assumption is that Travis likely perished in the wilderness, but authorities will wait for the coroner's examination to confirm the identity and cause of death.
In September 25th, 2025, one final press conference brings closure to the case. Sheriff Morrison announces that the remains found a week prior have been positively identified as Travis Decker. The prime suspect in the murder of Paitlin, Evelyn, and Olivia is now confirmed to be dead. Today, we close a dark chapter in our community's history, the sheriff says, noting that the law enforcement never gave up the search. He also confirms that there are no other suspects. The threat to the public is over. Investigators suspect Travis died by suicide, though the exact time and the circumstances of his death remain under investigation. With Travis Decker's death, there will be no trial. Only a grieving mother and a community left to remember 3 innocent lives and to wonder if more could have been done to prevent their heartbreaking loss.
Wow, Adrienne, this is a really sad case, and I remember that this was all over the news for months. They were just scouring the wilderness to try to find Travis Decker. Let's open this up for discussion and debate. And the first question I want to pose is one that might be a little controversial, but do you believe that Travis Decker was actually the one that killed his 3 daughters? Or is there any possibility that maybe this crime was committed by someone else who then killed Travis?
I don't think Travis Decker actually killed his 3 daughters. I think his body did. I don't know if his mind did. What I believe is that, and I know my son did 10 years in Afghanistan and had 20 Purple Hearts in his platoon. And I know a lot of them suffered from PTSD and the trauma that they saw over during the war. I think that though he may have physically did this horrible, horrible thing to the 3 daughters, I'm not sure mentally if he meant to do it.
I don't know. This is a tough one for me because I don't really feel like there's enough evidence to prove that he did it, but then there's not enough evidence to prove that he didn't. And the fact that he died, the real truth will never come out, but I don't know. I'm just struggling with this one.
This is Coach Pamsky. I agree with Adrienne with the mental illness and the PTSD that he had, and just, the struggles that he experienced in his mind. I agree with her. I think that this is something that he was struggling with within his mind, and knowing what PTSD is like, and all that is wrapped up in that, I think that he just really struggled. And I do wonder, with him being gone, whatever he did, whether he killed himself, or you wonder if maybe he had that moment of realization, if he came back to reality and realized what he did and then took his own life.
Yamsky, thank you. I'm curious because if I'm correct, you live in the area or in the same state. I'm sure that it was probably conversation with your friends. Could you share what the community and maybe some of the conversations you had with your friends regarding this case and what their thoughts were?
Well, something like this is very devastating. When you talk about 3 young little girls that couldn't defend themselves, of course, the community is just appalled. Mental illness is not something that they look at in a situation like this at first because, the innocent died and he's a monster. And so, a lot of the conversation gets wrapped up around that part of it. It's not till later when you learn more of the story, some say it doesn't matter. He killed them. He's guilty and no one else is involved, you know. But for me, I think about, oh, yes, this was horrifying, but what was happening that caused him to do this? What kind of support was he getting with PTSD and coming from the military and just all of that? I think there's deeper parts of this.
When they first found the 3 girls passed away and he was missing, were people immediately saying, "Oh, it was absolutely him," or were they thinking that maybe something had happened to him and it was something that happened to the 3 girls and the father?
It was a little bit of both. I think it was more believed that he did it, but there were some skepticism going on and people thinking that maybe there was somebody else that had done this. But I think as evidence was coming out, more people felt that he was the one that did it.
And was Whitney on the news a lot? Was there any information coming out on Whitney? Was she speaking to the press? Was the family speaking?
She was more silent, like, she didn't really say a whole lot. I mean, they did have one time where she was public, but mostly she was more behind the scenes.
That makes sense. I mean, a devastating loss when all your daughters are taken, stolen from you. Absolutely horrible. Joseph, go a little deeper in what you think regarding if Travis Decker actually killed his 3 daughters.
So, yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with everyone that I do believe ultimately he probably was the one who killed his daughters. But I do think it's interesting that it took them so long to find him. I know it's a dense wilderness area, but to me, that was just a little weird that it took them 3 months to find his body in the woods. And I did initially, it crossed my mind, okay, what if some random crazy person killed the girls and then killed Travis or abducted him? I think, look, anything is possible. So who knows? It's possible that someone else did it, then killed Travis or abducted him, and then dumped him in the woods at some point. That could explain why it took so long if he had been abducted and held somewhere, or killed and his body was being held somewhere and it was dumped closer to when they actually discovered it. But that's really a far out there theory. And like Pam said, now that more evidence has come out and you look at it in totality, I think, it's very likely that the official narrative of him being responsible is quite simply what happened.
You know, I remember thinking to myself, what a coward. Face your crime, right? Face the fact that you did it. Why are you running? But then as I was reading more and understanding the mental health issue, he's probably trying to run from himself. The problem is you can't get rid of your own shadow. And there was a lot of conversation, if you remember Joseph, and I remember Pamsky even sharing that he had skills. He knew how to live and survive out in these dense forest woods. It was kind of like for all of us watching, we're like, what is like it was almost confusing. What is going on? Why are you out there? What is happening? Are you planning on living in the woods? And then of course the pragmatic side of me thinking, you know, all of our cities have limited resource when it comes to the police. Do you remember anything about what that looked like as far as the search goes? Was it daily? Were there reports happening? We were getting a little bit of it, but I remember we were doing rooms and I would ask you, like, oh, can we get an update? Would you share a little bit about what you remember as far as the actual search itself for Travis when he was out in those forests and the woods?
Yeah, that was an ongoing search. They were out looking for him on a daily basis.
So let's talk about some warning signs or missed opportunities. Whitney had previously voiced concern about Travis's mental state, and she even tried to limit his visits with the children, yet he did still have unsupervised access to the girls.
I feel like there were some signs. I don't think that anyone thought that it would go to this level. And I wonder if when he actually murdered them, if that is the case, I wonder if he almost like blacked out and didn't even know what he was doing. And that's why he wound up killing himself because when he came out of that, that trans, he realized what he did and couldn't live with himself. I mean, there's so many unanswered questions, but um, I don't know that you could ever prepare for that. I don't know that you could ever see the signs to that.
It's really hard for Child Protective Services to just stop, right? You can't just remove someone's parental rights even if one of the parents is actually begging for help and for to notice that there's something going on because they're having conversations with him and he may be acting very normal and they have to maybe rule that this is a couple that's no longer married, they're fighting, and the wife doesn't want the husband to get his not that I understand the system so well, but as a guardian ad litem and understanding what this looks like, it's not so easy to just take away the rights. And so, looking at this and thinking, yes, she was voicing her concerns, but I think unfortunately that's all that she had the ability to do was to use her voice. She can't change the law. She can't go in and tell the judge he absolutely must give her whatever she needed, whether it was a restraining order or less time for him. And at the end of the day, Child Protective Services and those that are caring for the children and having to deal with these divorce cases, they have one concern. It is always for the children, but we're not fortune tellers. How do you really know what is happening, especially when a lot of times it's very easy to be a different person and to fool whoever is asking you questions. And they said that he was loving and never had any issues. The fact that he has been returning the children on time and the fact that he didn't that day was what was worrying her. It's hard because we don't get like all those details of what was happening between the two of them. I do think that warning signs were missed, and I hope that as these cases happen, that we can learn from each one so that there is prevention. So it's one thing to having this take place, but I hope that they meet and they talk about what they can learn and what can be done better.
Yeah, Adrian, I think that the wife or the ex-wife absolutely seems like she did everything she could have. She was very much on top of the custody situation. When the daughters and Travis didn't show up, she tried to reach out to him and give him a bit of a grace period to bring the girls back. But within an hour and a half, his phone was off. She just knew something was wrong. And she was immediately at that police department looking for the daughters. So it sounds like she did absolutely everything she could have done in that co-parenting situation, given everything we know, to try to protect her daughters while still respecting Travis's role as a father and him wanting to see the daughters. I do wonder, though, when it goes to the court system and Child Protective Services, when they're weighing whether to give him custody or how much, he was essentially homeless. He was living in his car. He had had a ticket leading up to this incident for not having insurance. So he doesn't have a home. He lives in his car. There's an irresponsibility there driving around without car insurance as an adult, especially when you're living in your car. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I do find it strange that he was homeless and was still able to get visitation rights. With his mental health issues, I know he transitioned to the National Guard after his service was over, but he wasn't able to continue in that position. So he was, I believe, unemployed at this point.
If you've never really witnessed someone with PTSD, that it's hard to understand what that looks like. I was at a doing disaster relief, and one of the men was a firefighter. We were all in like one room sleeping on cots, and I woke up that night and he freaked out. I mean, it was the scariest thing ever. And after he finally calmed down, he explained to me it was a PTSD. So seeing it in action made me understand. I mean, anything could trigger him. But Joseph, I do feel that this was definitely premeditated. So I'm not sure where that falls in to killing your daughters because of mental health, or was it something else? If I can't have them full time, I don't want anyone to have them full time. That kind of thinking too. I really wish that we could get in the minds of some of these cases to really understand like what was happening behind the scenes. Heather,
Yeah, I wanted to chime in on the PTSD part just because I actually have that diagnosis and I live with it every day. PTSD is very real to me. I mean, it's something that I live with on a day in, day out basis. It is manageable. It's manageable without medication. In fact, there really isn't any medication for it. It's long-term trauma therapy. But for an episode, it's literally like a quick flashback of a memory, and anything, like Adrienne said, it can set you off. It could be a smell, it could be a sound, it could be a light. It could be the sound of a fan. It can be anything. It could be a train, whatever it is that reminds you of that incident that happened, which often very much happens to me. I black out to the point where it's like I'm there, but I'm not there. I am freaking out. I am saying things that I wouldn't say. I am doing something I wouldn't do. It's very real. It's like it's happening to me now. Night terrors are very similar. Only, and I have had several of those. I actually had one where I tried to climb out of my window on the second floor of a building. And thankfully, I did not get very far because there was a refrigerator in front of my window. It's very real. And in that moment, I felt like it was like someone was coming after me and I was trying to get away. So these are very real. PTSD episodes are very, 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 very real. And the only cure for it is therapy.
Heather, thank you for speaking up. Thank you for sharing your words. They helping me, and I'm sure they're helping all of us in our audience understand a little bit more. And I really just want to say thank you for you for speaking up and helping us to understand.
Absolutely, Heather. And yes, he did have a PTSD diagnosis. He also had a borderline personality disorder diagnosis. And I'm just going to go quickly through a couple of the points of borderline personality disorder just for anyone who's unfamiliar. So a lot of the diagnostic criteria includes fear of abandonment, frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment, unstable relationships, intense alternating extremes of idealization and devaluation. A hallmark of borderline personality disorder, as I understand it, is almost this love-hate type of relationship. One second they love you or they love something or someone, and the next moment they hate it and they want nothing to do with it. An unstable self-image, shifting sense of identity, goals, values, impulsivity, risky behavior in at least two areas, whether it's spending money, sex, substance abuse, binge eating, reckless driving. And people with borderline personality disorder do have an increased risk of suicide. So those are just some of the hallmarks of borderline personality disorder. That combined with PTSD, combined with being homeless, I mean, yeah, that sounds like a recipe for disaster if you're not actively getting treatment for those diagnoses.
Joseph, I was actually saying to myself, I can't remember what exactly is a diagnosis. And then you read it to us. So thank you so much for taking the time to do that because that helped me to put the piece in the puzzle together in my mind. But how could it have been prevented? I feel like it's really hard to blame a system when the system does not have a look into the future to know what is going to happen or what to take place.
Yeah, I agree, Adrienne. I mean, for me, I think the fact that he wasn't able to find a home to live in, that would have been a red flag to me that there's something going on here that this person really isn't able to even take care of themselves, that maybe you should suspend visitation or have supervised visitation, because when they granted him temporary visitation, he doesn't have a home. So you can't even go in there and inspect whether this is a safe or proper environment to even have children of that age visiting with their parent. So that would have been a big red flag to me. Also, the ticket for the car insurance. I mean, if you can't do something so simple as to just go online, buy an insurance policy, even if it's the bare minimum, and keep it in force when you're driving around with your kids, like those are just clear signs that this person was having difficulty even doing the most basic things that a responsible adult would do.
So, Joseph, the goal is to have the kids have that relationship with the family member, right? Unless there's been really something that happened and that he's had previous harming behavior to the children or to Whitney, that wouldn't be like the biggest deal, right? Maybe he told Whitney he lives somewhere else. I'm not sure. So it's interesting. I'm not sure that the courts knew that he was homeless. He may have had an address. He may have shared that he had an address. So there's a lot behind that we probably don't know. Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
First of all, if he's driving around in a car that doesn't have insurance, that to me alone, like, why were these kids and you've been in the car with him? And then the second thing is that Joseph brought up a good point because if he doesn't have a place to live, why wasn't there like a supervised visit or some kind of a meeting place where he got to see them and spend time with them? Because if he doesn't have a home to bring them to, I mean, that to me would be a reason to not discontinue visitation, but to postpone it or come up with a solution that, these kids have a place to go. Because if he doesn't have any money and he doesn't have any car insurance, the kids shouldn't even be in the car driving around. If he doesn't have a place to go with them and all he does have is the car and they have nowhere to go as far as like even outdoors to play because it's raining, what are they going to do? Sit in the car? So I think that the system failed the mom and the kids on that part.
It's interesting, Debbie, that Colorado uses a fault-based system, meaning the at-fault driver's insurance pays for the other party's damage. It's an awful thing not to have insurance, but there's so many people that do it. Like, we know that so many people are driving around, unfortunately. And it's interesting, Colorado, you have to have additional coverage too. So I just kind of took a quick look to see what does that look like. But at the end of the day, if you're at the bottom of despair, it's kind of the last thing you're thinking, you know what? My life is whatever it is, and I don't need car insurance. Like, what is that going to do? So, yes, it does show that he's, irresponsible, but it also shows that he is going through some kind of crisis. So then I'm thinking, it's easy enough for them to actually look at things like that, right? Whitney, the wife, feels, that it was the system, and she's not talking about the judge in the court. She's talking about the VA, our system with our soldiers who go out there and put their lives on the line and absolutely 100% sacrifice for our freedom. That would be something that I think when you're sitting down and talking to that soldier that you would want to say, how are you doing with your insurance? Like, what does that look like? Because you're making such a great point, Joseph, that is an inside view on what's taking place. So could they have realized, wait a second, you don't have insurance? What's going on with that reason? And digging deeper, there are probably other points like that could make the system realize, oh, wait, he does need extra help. He's having trouble just making sure that he's got a roof over his head. So it's a great point. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and it's difficult, right? Like, we're looking at it after the fact. We don't even have all the internal facts, so I'm not trying to be judgmental, but I get frustrated because stories like this, while they're rare, to me, they still happen far too often. This case made me think of the Susan Powell case, which we haven't covered yet, but that was a case where a husband, Josh Powell, murdered his wife. They couldn't prove it. He was suspected in it. And 3 years later, even though there were so many red flags, he wound up burning down his house and killing his two sons. And that was a horrible failure on the people who were supposed to protect those children. We also have Lori Vallow Daybell. There's just so many cases within the past decade or two where a parent kills their kids, and it's so sad to hear. And I continue to hear stories like this, but I don't know what the answer is.
I do want to say, so this just went in my head. How did he leave the military? What was his standing? So as of October 2025, I'm getting the information that Travis Decker was not in good standing with the military. Though he served honorably in the Army, his subsequent service in the National Guard ended with a pending disciplinary discharge due to his failure to attend drills.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's important context too. So seems like there was issues even going back to while he was in the National Guard. Another thing, there was some reporting that stated that as part of the custody arrangement and his visitation arrangement, he would seek out and receive mental health services. The reportings that I read said that he chose not to comply. He chose not to do that.
Interesting. Decker reportedly told his attorney that the VA turned him away, saying they could not provide the psychiatric evaluation he requested, but discharge for failure to attend drills would likely render him ineligible for any additional benefits.
That's unfortunate. But, there's plenty of other options that he could have explored. There are free or discounted mental health services that people who can't afford them can go to. It's not like the VA was his only option. He could have found a way to comply with it and get that help if he really tried to. But the whole thing is just unfortunate.
So you're right. Even if the VA couldn't offer those services, they would say, okay, here's the next thing that you possibly can do. So, anyways, I guess we can't go back, but all I can think of is moving forward is very important during these times. That's a wrap on this Debate the News true crime episode. The case of Travis Decker is as tragic as it is disturbing, a stark example of how mental instability and unchecked desperation can culminate in an unfathomable crime. The story has forced us to grapple with difficult questions about mental health, the court system, and the very nature of parental love that turns lethal. But above all, we remember the victims, little Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia, whose bright lives were stolen far too soon. And their community will forever mourn the loss of three beautiful sisters, and their memory will not be forgotten.
Travis Decker's story serves as a sobering reminder that unspeakable horror can emerge from the most familiar places, even a father's visitation with his kids. It underscores the importance of taking mental health crises seriously and re-examining how we safeguard children in domestic situations. In the end, no explanation can justify the murder of innocent children. All we can do is learn from this tragedy and work harder to prevent anything like it from happening again. Thank you to all of our listeners for joining us tonight. We appreciate you being a part of our Debate the News true crime community. If you found this episode informative and thought-provoking, please subscribe to the podcast and consider leaving us a review. Your support helps us keep these important conversations going. We'll be back every Tuesday and Thursday with another case to debate and discuss. Until then, stay safe, stay vigilant, and have a good night.